The right to protest is really at the core of our democratic society. On Tuesday, August 31st, there was a demonstration at Fulton Street, which is where the World Trade Center was located. A peaceful demonstration organized by the War Resisters League. Prior to the demonstration, the organizers spoke with police to negotiate a route. They negotiated a route.
Listen to me. Are you going to listen or no? You have to comply with just be patient. When you're walking through the streets. So when there's a red light, you have to stop.
I ask your cooperation so that everybody has a safe march.
The protesters barely got half a block away from the start before the police department circled the protesters with their infamous orange netting, and over the course of the next couple of hours, 227 people were arrested.
This entire group, from that point to that point, is under arrest.
Police used flexible orange netting to corral crowds protesting during the convention. Tomorrow, the City Council will hold hearings on how the police treated protesters.
And in the netting of those so-called protesters, many innocent bystanders were also picked up.
Cinematographer Michael Schiller and his partner both had cameras trained on protesters near Ground Zero August 31st. Schiller was arrested while filming for a documentary on Outkast's Andre 3000. He took the hip-hop star to the spot where the arrests happened.
They blocked off both sides of the street. So no matter if you were a pedestrian going to the subway, you were on your way to work, if you were from here to that side of the block and you were in this orange net, you were going to jail.
We saw people get brutalized, beaten. We saw people whose handcuffs were too tight get their handcuffs tightened. We saw a girl, a minor, kicked into a solitary confinement thing on the bus that took us here.
People are being exposed to carcinogens, asbestos.
We were forced into pens in a room that was covered in layers of oil and grease and gasoline.
So when people have been sleeping on the ground, their skin has been in contact with this, and so they've been coming down with rashes and other skin problems.
My whole leg swelled up, and they wouldn't let me see a doctor.
All the men were forced into one pen. It was close quarters. I mean, it was probably close to like 500 guys in one pen. There were about 12 of these pens with chain link fences and razor wire at the top. They cranked the cuffs on really tight enough to cut my wrist.
We encountered Michael Schiller, and when we learned that he had been caught up in the orange nets down at Fulton Street and that he had videotape of it, the Civil Liberties Union was quite eager to get a look at it. Every single one of those cases was ultimately dismissed by the district attorney after the district attorney looked at the videotape.
By telling the protesters they could have a safe march, albeit under strict limitations, the police likely created the impression among the participants that the march had official sanction. The DA adding that he wouldn't prosecute because it would be difficult to establish that the individual defendants who have been charged were deliberately defying police directives or were intentionally acting in a disorderly manner.
I don't know of any other time in history when the district attorney has looked at 227 cases and dismissed them all outright in one fell swoop. This is really historic and unique in New York history.
We have no choice but to take our complaints and our concerns to a different forum, and that is the federal courts.
In the course of the lawsuits challenging the unlawful arrests, what we learned was that the NYPD had developed a not just nationwide, but an international surveillance operation to find out who was coming to New York to protest. And that's pretty shocking, because what they were spying on, what they were engaged in surveillance of without a warrant, by the way, was lawful protest activity. Lawful protest, not terrorism, protest. And they were visiting people in other parts of the country to intimidate them from coming to New York. That's not legitimate police activity. That's intimidation, that's interference with First Amendment rights, that's a civil rights violation.
This is not what freedom is supposed to be.
Are you